This video demonstrates the mechanical installation and basic commissioning of a pneumatic air feeder on a stamping press. Before starting, isolate the press, release stored air pressure, and follow the safety procedures for the specific machine. The first step is to identify a suitable mounting position on the side of the press frame. The feeder centerline must match the intended strip path and the working height of the die. Use the mounting plate as a reference while checking height, reach, and clearance around the press table. Confirm that the feeder and guide assembly will not interfere with the press controls, guards, or normal access. With the position confirmed, mark the mounting holes directly from the plate or an approved drilling template. Recheck every mark before drilling, because the final hole pattern determines the feeder alignment. The marked points should remain level and square to the planned direction of material travel. Drill only after confirming that the selected area is structurally suitable and clear of hidden surfaces. Keep the drill perpendicular to the surface so the fasteners will seat correctly, and load the plate evenly. Use the bit size and fastening method specified for the press and the supplied mounting hardware. Remove chips and burrs before placing any component against the finished surface. Inspect the completed holes for clean edges, correct spacing, and sufficient thread or fastener engagement. A close visual check now prevents forced alignment during final assembly. Bring the mounting plate into position and start the fasteners without fully tightening them. Leave enough movement for the final height and level adjustment. Check that the plate sits flat against the press with no rocking, gap, or trapped debris. Tighten the fasteners gradually and evenly while watching for any shift in the plate position. Do not use the bolts to pull a badly misaligned plate into place. Correct the position first. After tightening, verify the mounting face remains level and parallel to the intended feed direction. Check all fasteners again and make sure their heads are fully seated against the plate. The finish bracket must be rigid, because movement here will directly affect feeding accuracy and repeatability. Make the final plate adjustment before the feeder body is installed and adds extra weight. Confirm sufficient clearance for the feeder body, guide frame, pneumatic fittings, and future maintenance. The mounting plate is now ready to receive the feeder. Lift the feeder with secure support and keep hands away from the joint between the feeder and plate. Guide the feeder onto the mounting surface without striking the locating faces or pneumatic components. Start the mounting fasteners by hand, then confirm the body is fully seated before tightening. The feeder should sit square to the press and point directly along the future material path. Support the weight until enough fasteners are engaged to hold the assembly safely. Tighten the feeder mounting points evenly while checking that the body does not twist. A correctly installed feeder should feel rigid and remain aligned when moderate hand pressure is applied. Next, place the pneumatic components where their ports and service points remain accessible. Route the first air lines according to the feeder diagram, not simply by hose color or appearance. Cut each tube square and clean so the push-in fitting can seal around the full circumference. Push the tube fully into the fitting, then pull back lightly to confirm it is locked. Allow smooth bends and enough service length, but keep the hoses clear of the press working area. Avoid sharp bends, crushing points, hot surfaces, and any path where repeated motion can rub the tube. Pause to check that every inserted tube is fully seated and visibly undamaged. Install the remaining fittings carefully and hold the valve body while tightening threaded connections. Excessive torque can damage small valve ports, while insufficient tightening can create air leaks. Keep sealant and debris out of the internal airflow passage when assembling threaded fittings. Arrange the hoses so each connection can be inspected and replaced without removing the feeder. At this stage, verify the routing against the supplied pneumatic schematic before applying pressure. Connect the remaining ports one at a time and confirm the destination of each line. The exact port functions depend on the feeder configuration and must not be guessed from this footage. Use clean, dry, regulated compressed air within the pressure range specified for the machine. Before pressurizing, make sure loose hose loops cannot enter the die area or touch moving press parts. This section shows the solenoid valve assembly and the air lines connected around the feeder. Check that the valve is supported and that its fittings are not carrying the weight of the hoses. Trace each hose visually from end to end and correct any crossing that makes inspection difficult. Electrical terminal wiring for the solenoid is not shown clearly in the source material. Follow the equipment wiring diagram and have qualified personnel complete that connection. Inspect the completed air circuit for loose fittings, damaged tubing, and unsupported loops. Recheck the feeder body and verify that the pneumatic installation has not disturbed its alignment. Now inspect the guide frame that will support and center the strip before it enters the feeder. Loosen only the required adjusters, move the guide assembly, and retighten it without forcing the rods. Set the guide frame square to the feeder so material will approach without sideways steering. Adjust both sides evenly and keep the support rollers parallel to the feeder entry. The guide should control the strip path while still allowing smooth movement without binding. After each adjustment, move the frame by hand and check for looseness or uneven resistance. Set the lateral guide positions to the actual strip width when production material is available. Do not clamp the strip tightly. A small functional clearance is required for reliable travel. Lock all guide adjustments and confirm the assembly remains centered with the feeder inlet. The work now moves to the flywheel side, where the mechanical triggering assembly will be installed. Choose a rigid mounting area that allows adjustment while staying clear of every rotating component. Mark the bracket location only after checking the full rotation path and available guarding clearance. Drill the prepared point square to the surface and remove all chips before assembly. Inspect the first mounting result before continuing with the linkage installation. Fit the support pieces loosely at first so the trigger position can still be aligned. Keep every bracket outside the sweep of the flywheel and shaft. With power isolated, rotate the press slowly by the approved manual method to check clearance. Watch the feeder side at the same time and confirm nothing shifts, catches, or tightens unexpectedly. This preliminary check should cover a complete press cycle before any powered test. Return to the flywheel side and refine the bracket position using the observed motion. The trigger should operate at a repeatable position without contacting the rotating shaft itself. Tighten the adjustment points gradually, then repeat the manual rotation check. These close views document the completed valve and hose arrangement after the mechanical adjustments. Confirm there are no kinked lines and that all exhaust and connection points remain unobstructed. Install the linkage support bracket so it is rigid, but still provides the required adjustment range. Start all fasteners before final tightening to avoid twisting the bracket out of alignment. Check the bracket from more than one angle and confirm it is square to the intended motion. A rigid bracket is essential because vibration can change the trigger point during production. Tighten the mounting hardware evenly, then test the remaining adjustment travel by hand. Do not leave tools, loose fasteners, or cable loops near the flywheel area. Continue securing the support structure while maintaining clearance from the press cover and shaft. Use locking hardware or the specified retention method so vibration cannot loosen the assembly. Verify that each joint can move through its intended range without side loading. The bracket should now be stable enough for the final trigger components. Join the linkage pieces and confirm that the moving member follows the flywheel cycle smoothly. The next sequence installs and adjusts the switch and its mechanical actuator. Position the actuator so it reaches the switch without impact, over-travel, or continuous pressure. Leave the fastener slightly loose until the switching point has been checked through a full cycle. Route the switch cable away from rotating parts and protect it from sharp edges. The exact electrical terminals and press control connections are not visible in this footage. Use the feeder wiring diagram, press schematic, and qualified electrical personnel for those connections. Never assign a function from wire color alone, because color conventions can vary between machines. Slowly rotate the mechanism and observe exactly where the actuator begins to operate the switch. The switch must actuate once at the intended point and reset reliably during every cycle. Adjust the contact point in small steps and repeat the full rotation after each change. Maintain enough clearance to prevent the actuator from binding when the press vibrates. When the timing is repeatable, tighten the bracket and switch fasteners to lock the setting. Manually cycle the mechanism again and listen for one clean switch action per revolution. This mechanical check confirms movement only. It does not confirm any electronic cam parameter or terminal assignment. Begin the functional linkage check at low risk, with the die area clear and no material loaded. Observe the feeder and valve response, and stop immediately if an action repeats or occurs at the wrong time. A normal empty check shows one consistent response for each intended trigger. Inspect the flywheel-side assembly after testing and confirm the settings have not moved. Inspect the solenoid valve again for secure fittings, correct hose seating, and any sign of leakage. The press and feeder are now operated together for an empty functional test. Watch for a single feeder action per press cycle and a complete return before the next cycle. The movement should be repeatable, with no hesitation, double action, or hose interference. Stop and correct any abnormal motion before continuing. A close-up test makes it easier to confirm the pneumatic response and full mechanical travel. Listen for continuous air leakage and check that every moving part returns fully. Repeat several cycles while watching the feeder body, guide frame, hoses, and trigger bracket. Stable repeated movement indicates the mechanical installation and basic air linkage are functioning consistently. The final sequence shows continuous empty operation of the installed feeder and linkage. Loaded feeding, feed length verification, terminal wiring, and electronic cam settings require separate checks using the machine documentation.